Alright, I've got me about a 10-foot piece of 1.5-inch PVC. This is what I'm going to use to make my fishing pole holders out of for my boat. And all I'm going to do right now is chop it into 11-inch sections, which you can see I've got my depth gauge here, so I can slide up against it. I'll have 11 inches there. And sadly there's a rainstorm coming in, so I'm going to shut this camera off and go ahead and whip this out real quick. I'll get back to you on the next step. Alright, so now I got all my pipe cut up. I've got 10 pieces that are 11 inches long and a little bit of scrap left over, which is good because I'll use it for practicing my cut for my fishing poles to go down into later. I also went ahead and cut myself 2 pieces of 2x4, 13 inches long, and 1 piece at 17 inches long. And the reason is I'm going to put 3 pole holders on each of the 2 13-inch long 2x4s, and then I'm going to have 4 left over. And so instead of just wasting the last one, I'll just put 4 on the last one that's 17 inches long. And what I'll end up doing with these is I'll mount them on my boat, and I'll have 1 set of 3 on one side, 1 set of 3 on the other side, and a set of 4 will be on the back of the boat. So I can anchor out, I can have all them poles going every which way, spread them out nice and even around the boat. So that's it for right now, and I'll be back here in just a minute when I get set up for the next stage. Alright, so now I made a couple marks on one of these pipes. All I did was kind of hold it up there about where I'd want it. Kind of centered up, but a little more towards the top on this 2x4. So I'm going to end up screwing it down to the board like that, but I need my screws to be in just a little bit from the edge of the board, so that's what I got those 2 marks there for. And you can just eyeball that, you can measure it, don't matter what you want to do to that. In order to replicate that quick and easy on all the rest of them, so that everything comes out the same, I took me an old piece of scrap board I got laying around, and take my magic marker, and then right there where the marks are at, see, I'll just make me a mark on this board down here, like so. And it's just a super simple little marking jig. So now I can put my next pipe up here, just like that, and I've got my marks. So now I can make my mark on my pipe, just like so. See? So I'm going to do the rest of those and then I'll be back. And also, just to keep the lines square with each other, I take my marker and I draw a little bit of a horizontal line here to go along with my little vertical line. And so that way I won't have one hole over here and one hole kind of rotated around a little bit so that it's not trying to sit down square. I doubt that'll matter. You could probably just eyeball it and be fine, but I'm a little bit OCD, so I go for the perfectionist angle if I can. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small drill bit, about yay big, doesn't matter, just something that'll make a nice pilot hole for my screws, and I'm going to drill a hole all the way through both sides of the PVC. And once I get done doing that, I'm going to come back with a bigger drill bit, and I'm going to drill me a hole only on one side of the PVC, which is big enough for my screw head to go through. So I'm going to have to find me a screw and find me another drill bit, which I got over yonder, that will allow the screw head to go through. But I don't really need it much bigger than that. It wouldn't really matter. Just the bigger the hole, you know, don't get too crazy with it. You don't want to weaken the structure, but if your hole's too big on the one side, it doesn't matter. It could be a 1/2 inch hole. It's fine. But your pilot hole, you want to be just a little bit bigger than the threads on whatever screw you're going to use to attach your PVC to your plywood. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll be back after I've got some of those done. It occurs to me that some people may just want to kind of hold it up there and then bring the drill bit down to it and just kind of guess on getting it straight, which is fine. You probably do a pretty good job, but you can tell based on if you're perfectly centered up or if you twist it or whatever when the bit goes through, it might throw it off a little bit. So I went and devised myself a handy dandy quick little piece of scrap center jig. So you can see all I did was throw that on the table saw, run it down the straight edge, and just move the saw blade over a little bit at a time until I gouge that out. You could do it a lot faster if you had a dado jig in your saw, but you could probably do it faster with a single blade than the amount of time it would take to change out for your dado jig. So take that, set it up there, get it kind of centered. You can put a clamp on one end if you want to, or you can just kind of freehand hold it. Then you stick your pipe up there, and see when you get it centered up then and clamp it in place, it's going to keep your pipe from trying to roll on you. It's going to keep it from trying to shift sideways on you. So just a little tip there. If you got a piece of scrap wood laying around and a table saw, you can make that in a hurry. If not, you can still make it pretty quick out of some scrap by just taking a flat piece on the bottom and a couple of thin strips and either wood glue them on top or throw some staples in it. Just separate it a little bit. And as you can see, that is just about the right width for this size pipe. So if you've got different size pipes that you're doing for other projects, make you a couple of jigs. Make you a 1 inch, a 1.5 inch, a 2 inch, and just leave that little piece of scrap sitting around for when you get ready to drill through some pipe later. Alright, back after I drilled all these holes in here. Alright, I had sort of a last minute idea. You remember I had that little piece left over after cutting out all these 11 inchers? It was a little over 8 inches long. So what I did is I chopped it up into little 1 inch long segments, and I did the same kind of hole where I drilled a fat hole on one side and a pilot hole on the other side that I did in all of these pipes. And so what I'm going to do is I'll put one of them on my board, I'll put one of these in between, and then I'll have another one, and I'll just stagger it like that. The idea is that while your fishing poles will go in these long tubes, you can put you can hook hooks on here, you can put pliers down in there, you can put a jaw grabber down there, whatever you want, any kind of tools you want handy right there by your fishing poles, you can drop down in there, just be a little tool storage kind of a caddy. So that's it for now, and I'll be back here in a minute when I get the next part ready to go. Alrighty then, now I've got my router box set up. Yeah, that's homemade too. I've got a 3/4 inch bit in it. I've got me a stopper board. Yeah, it's my marking board from earlier. I got me a stopper board clamped on there with about a 4 inch depth. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can make it deeper, you can make it shallower, whatever you want to do. But as I'm sure you know, your fishing pole has got the pole sticking out the bottom, and then it's got the reel, and the reel's got a little stem on it going down to the pole. And so what we're going to cut is we're going to cut this little groove in here that stem off the reel can sit down into. Let your pole get deeper down into here. Now all I'm going to do is a simple straight cut. Now if you want to, you can do a straight cut and then you can curve it over. You could even do a straight cut and then curve it over and hook it back up a hair. But I'm not going to get all fancy like that. When I got a fish on the pole, I don't want to have to fight with unlocking it out of the pole holder to get it loose. These things are going to be sticking basically straight up in the air, and so I don't see any way a pole is going to get flipped out of it anyway. And if it does, well, that'll just make another story to tell. So I've got my stopper set up. I've got it lined up on the center of the pipe here. So all I'm going to do is turn it on and shove these things straight up in there until they hit my stopper, and then get them out. Now, as you can see, I've got my large holes here, I got my small holes there, and so I want the slit to be lined up on the front facing side of the pole holder. And so what you want to do is turn it over until your small pilot holes are sticking straight up. Now this is why I didn't do these slits in the first place. It's easier to line this slit that I'm cutting up with my holes than it is to line my holes up with the slit later on. It's really not a big deal. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can just wing the whole thing. I mean, it could be cockeyed like that. It's not going to make any difference. The only difference it's going to make is when you stick your pole down in there, instead of being like straight looking at you, it'll be turned over a little bit. So what? It doesn't matter. Just throw these things together. The whole point is to be cheap and quick. And when I get done with these suckers, they're going to cost about $7 for the pipe and the screws and maybe an hour of labor to make all three of the ones that I'm making. So don't get too picky. Just get these suckers together so you can get out on the lake and have some fun fishing. Alright, so I'm going to shut this off while I run this thing, and I'll be back after I get all these cut and I'm ready to assemble them. Alright, so here we are. We got all of our slits cut in these pipes. As you can see, they came out pretty good. A little word of caution, they will try to twist on you just a little bit when you first hit the blade on that router. And if you don't have a router, you know, just grab you a rock bit for a drill. Use that to cut it out. You could use a jigsaw. You could use a good sharp knife to cut through this stuff. It's really not that hard. I try to avoid the knife. That's a hard way to do it actually, but I'm sure you can find a way to cut this slit in here. If you had to, you could use your table saw blade. Just keep it kind of low and stop when you get down to the end. It doesn't matter. However you want to do it, or however you can do it. And don't worry if your holes aren't perfectly straight. It really doesn't matter. All you got to do is be able to drop your rod right down in there so that that stem off of your reel isn't hitting. I mean, you don't want to have to fight it getting it back out. So as long as you get the hole in there, good job. So I've got all these built. Everything's ready to assemble. And so I'm going to go ahead and put one of these together and let you see it after the fact. I'm sure I don't have to educate anybody on how to hold something over a board and put a screw in it. So I'll be back here in a minute. Alright, so here's one of them completely assembled. As you can see, I got my two short pieces down there for tossing pliers or laying hooks across. I got my 3 pole holders here. I left a little bit of meat on the end of the board for attaching it to the boat, which I'm just going to screw mine straight to the side of the boat like that, but you got room here for the screws, or there. However in the world you want to attach it, it don't really matter. You could even put you another board back on the back of it to attach it, or whatever. I'm sure you can figure that out, depending on what kind of rig you got. So, that's it for now. I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of these together, and then I'll lay them all out, and we'll be done. Alright, and there we have it. All the pole holders are done. They all came out really nice. They're all very sturdy. I'm not going to have to worry about a fish ripping that off anytime soon, or ever. Probably, I'll paint it after I figure out exactly how I'm going to mount it, drill my holes and stuff. That way the paint can get down to them too, but I'll paint them. That way it'll help water seal them a little bit. But other than that, they are done and ready to go. So I hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something from it. Oh, by the way, if you want to buy one of these 3 or 4 pole holders online, I think Amazon's got them for like 15 bucks a piece. This was $6 worth of pipe, maybe 20-30 cents worth of screws, and about an hour of work beginning to end to get all this done. And the 2x4, maybe $2. I don't really know what 2x4 to go for nowadays, but I just got a bunch laying around anyways. So I didn't have to buy it, but if you did, $2-3 for a 2x4, and you can cut enough pieces out to make a whole bunch of these. So hope you enjoyed, hope you make some, hope you catch a lot of fish. Good luck, guys.